Good afternoon. Hello. Welcome at Talents. Thank you. I'm very happy to announce our next talk here. It's about film music and composing, and we have invited Daniel Blumberg. He won last year the Oscar for the best film music score for The Brutalist. His next feature, next film, is going to be screened also at the Berlinale tomorrow. It's The Testament of Anne Lee, so you should go see it. Everyone living in Germany. Also, it's going to be in the theaters, I think, the week after. But what we are talking here about is really like looking into his mind, trying to understand his very complex creativity, because he's not only in the field of music, he's into drawing, illustration, and all. We're going to have a good look into his procedures and processes in creative work. And I welcome on stage Daniel and Ida, our moderator. Please. Happy to have you. Welcome.
Thank you for the lovely introduction, Tobias, and also from me. Welcome to our composer's talk with Daniel Blumberg. You may clap again because, you know. And welcome to you, Daniel.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
I'll be a little bit awkward now because I will just rush through all the stuff you did in your life so far while you're sitting next to me and talk about you in the third person. So apologies for the cringe for the next minute. But I think people deserve to know that you built a career by following your instincts, which 6 years ago led you to scoring your first film. In the next 90 minutes or so, we will discuss what led you to scoring, whether there's a difference between composing a piece for an album and writing music for a film, how to embrace chaos and confusion, and where you have put your Oscar for the score to The Brutalist. Maybe. I'm Ida Baranejad. I'm a film and music critic, and I feel like I followed your career or your musical career pretty much since I was in my early 20s, and probably you too. So I'm very excited that we get to talk. You've been a professional musician pretty much since you were 15. Since 2013, Daniel has released music mostly, but not always solo, mostly with the label Mute. Music nerds will appreciate. And often with fellow artists from the community of London's venue Café Otto. If you've never been to Café Otto, you have to change that, wonderful place. In 2019, you started composing music first for short films. The first feature with your compositions was The World to Come, where you featured musical legends like Peter Brötzmann. Jazz heads like me will be starstruck. In 2024, he composed a score for a little-known film called The Brutalist, for which he won a little-known award called the Academy Awards. And last year, you produced a score for Gianfranco Rossi's Below the Clouds, and will celebrate the release of your most recent project, The Testament of Anne Lee, by Mona Fast of Tomorrow. Aside from being an experimental composer and a composer for film, Daniel is also a visual artist and has previously exhibited at Deichtorhallen in Hamburg, at Union Gallery in London, in Rome and London, and beyond. Here you are to talk about how you do it all, and I'm looking forward to pick your brain a little bit. You're celebrating the release of your fourth major film score tomorrow evening. Are you nervous, or are you a seasoned premiere red carpet type of guy by now?
I don't know. I mean, it's nice that it's at the Berlinale because, you know, before working in films, I love films since I was 17. So it is quite exciting for me, like the festivals like Venice Film Festival and then the Berlinale and stuff. They're actually very meaningful to me. Because I'd look at DVDs and see if I was choosing what to watch, I'd sort of see these things and think, oh, maybe I should check that out. Yeah.
If it's been approved by Berlinale.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
It's going to be weird and wonderful.
Yeah.
You originally come from a background of experimental music. Maybe let's dive right in there. How does a musician from, the Café Otto community, this free jazz and experimental music venue in East London, end up on these red carpets in Hollywood?
Well, no, I think when talking about Otto, I went there when for the first time I went there, I was 22, and I saw Keiji Haino, who's a really amazing Japanese guitarist, he was doing a solo improvisation with guitar, and I'd never seen improvised music before.
It's life-changing when you see it for the first time, and you're open to it.
It was to me, because before that I was in bands, since I was a teenager, I was in like bands where you go and perform like the same songs over and over again, and I sort of there was something missing. I didn't really enjoy it, and when I saw that performance, it was weird. It was seeing music that related to my taste in film, and also particularly the way that I was drawing, because I was always drawing with I'd have a blank piece of paper and just draw. There'd be no sort of planning apart from materials. So I was drawn to it immediately, and then started working with people who were going to the venue and seeing lots of improvised shows. At first I thought it was all amazing. Then you sort of refine your taste a bit. But, when I met Brady Corbet for the first time, we were like 24, so it was, and we had some drinks and stuff, and ended up at Café Otto. And it was, we were sort of friends since that evening that we met, and
sounds like a good evening.
Yeah, it was lovely. It was like a noise show, but
a great place to meet friends.
Yeah. But yeah, I think ever since, I got back into songwriting about 5 years afterwards, because I thought songs were stupid at that point. I thought, it's just pushing the listener into like a very fixed place when you're listening to lyrics and music, and it's just all sort of pushing the listener into one, receiving in one way. Whereas with cinema, the obvious person was like, when I was 18, seeing Tarkovsky and sort of understanding that every time you see it, it can be a different experience. And that was a quality with improvisation or improvised music, where it can be sort of have space for you to live with it in a way. And particularly, with them bringing these musicians into a songwriting context was tricky, but really interesting. And then when I started doing feature films, it was sort of almost a similar thing, where you're trying to retain the quality of something that's really sort of just happening, and unraveling in front of you. Mm-hmm. How do you get that to sort of work in a film situation where you're like really having to be specific about time? And
I was wondering exactly that while I was preparing our conversation, because as an experimental musician, I assume you are used to a far freer flow of work than fitting into a filming schedule and reacting to someone else's creative vision. How do you bring that together? The free-flowing approach of experimental music and, having to adhere to someone else's demands creatively, but also time-wise.
Well, a few things. I mean, first of all, if you're in a situation with a director working on something together, it can, if it's for me, it's like working with the right director. For me, is like, it doesn't feel like a demand from someone to make something. It feels like a collaboration. And working with Brady or Gianfranco, or Mona, they're artists that I really respect and want to make stuff with, in the same way that it's a similar feeling to the musicians that I work with. So you sort of come together and you're sharing ideas and thinking, what if this happens, or could it be like this? And that exchange, it doesn't feel like a demand. And then in terms of like the process, and you were saying like the structure of film, everything has a structure. So if you do a live concert, you're playing on a particular stage, maybe the context is like a festival where there's other artists playing, or maybe it's your own show where you can like design how long the set is exactly. Like, do people hear music before they hear your set? But the film projects, I mean, one of the sort of crude ways of seeing the difference is like definitely scale, because it's long-winded. It can be very long-winded. But, yeah.
Yeah, before we maybe see a few examples, when you do a score, what do you want to achieve with the music that will accompany the film, the story, the narrative?
It depends. I prefer films to music. So
I hear that often from musicians, that they prefer literature or film to music as consuming themselves.
Yeah, it was always, when I got into film, I was 17, and I saw Kieslowski Decalogue, and it just completely, changed my life, and I was really moved by that, and sort of saw what an experience cinema could be. And it continued to be like that more than, like, my DVD collection is so much better than my record collection. But it was also kind of an escape, because I didn't understand the construct of filmmaking, and I was just watching these things sort of.
You didn't have to you weren't deconstructing them in your head.
Yeah, like with the concert, sometimes I'll just be like thinking all these things about the dissecting what I'm seeing or hearing, and relating it to my own practice. I sort of sometimes think it's like a selfish way of listening, because because I've been working in music since I was 15. I think maybe that's what sometimes happens, but it hasn't happened it happens with cinema when it's shit. But when I love the film, I don't really think, oh, the score's great, or I've never been I'd be the worst film critic, because I hate coming out of the cinema and talking about, oh, this performance was really good, and this cinematography was really good, or the production design was really bad. I'm just like, I like that. And then think about it for a week or the rest of my life, but you remember it, or remember the feeling that you've had. But yeah, so with the film scores, it's like with, for example, Gianfranco Rossi, he's one of my favorite filmmakers ever. And so when he asked me to do music for his new film, my first idea and approach to it was just don't fuck up this film, basically.
Were you tempted to say no? you don't need a score? You've never used scores before?
No, I definitely, because of the Oscar as well, I've been started to get asked to do like these random films where people are just like...
What was the most random?
I'm definitely not saying any, because but Gianfranco asked me, I immediately was like, yeah, of course, you know. But when I watched it, before I watched it, I said, I'll make something, but if it doesn't add like 5% to the film, then we just put it in the bin and it's fine, you know. Because I was excited about his new film, because he spends 3 years, I think he was in Pompeii for 4 years shooting. And it's kind of an event. It's definitely an event in my life when he makes a new film. So, yeah, it's just... But I was also happy that he asked me to do it, because I thought maybe because I would respect that. I love films with no score, you know, so in a way that's quite good that he asked me. Like, yeah.
You wouldn't overdo it?
Yeah, I sort of trusted that I would just be respectful with it, and I don't know. Yeah, he knows what he needs as well, you know, he's really good in that way, so.
But when it comes to music supervision for other films, decisions are often made last minute on how a scene should sound like, what kind of song they want to use. With the Brutalist and the Rossi film, and now again with the Testament of Anne Lee, your approach together with the directors, with the team, was very, very different, as you just outlined. Can you take us through your process a little bit? And I know that you have some photographs and videos that you want to show us.
Oh yeah, I've got a PowerPoint presentation.
Well, this is even better than what you planned is even better than a PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, it's like raw, improvised desktop. But what I've got loads of things on there.
Yeah,
but,
maybe we'll start. You started talking about the Naples film. Maybe we'll start there. Your first project after The Brutalist.
It was actually after I did Anne Lee straight from the Brutalist,
okay.
And then Gianfranco's. Anne Lee, the deadline was because they were on celluloid and showing it on film at Venice, so their deadline was earlier than Gianfranco's.
Okay.
Gianfranco is very digital. Mm-hmm. So
which one do you want to start out showing us the process?
I can show you Gianfranco. It was cool because, yeah, when I saw the first cut of Gianfranco's film, initially he asked me to make music for the end because the film, the camera suddenly goes underwater at the end of the film.
It's a documentary about Naples and Pompeii.
Yeah. And there's like loads of Roman sculptures underwater in Baia, in the volcanic region. And yeah, it's amazing footage because it sort of plunges underwater and then you see all these sort of bubbles and then fish and then these Roman sculptures. And the idea was, first of all, just to make music for that moment and then into the credits. And in the end, we did a whole score throughout the film. It was quite freeing for me because when I first saw the cut, it was really good, but I noticed he was using like sound design in certain places, which for me that's like an elevation of the sound, because where he's not. But, you know, I just thought, he uses only footage, sound that he's recorded and stuff. But when I heard the sound design, I thought, those are moments where we can think about score. Mm-hmm. But we started in my bath.
So this was the first day working on the score?
That's me. Gianfranco came to London. I told I told him about these. I had these hydrophones, which are underwater microphones, and they're used for, scientifically for recording the sound of whales and whatever you want to do underwater, really. This is Gianfranco shot this. This is me just playing music from a speaker.
Just random music? Or was
this sounds like one of the saxophone players that I ended up using. Yeah. Anyway, Gianfranco shot that film after winning a Golden Bear. That's what it's called, right? The Bear.
Yes.
So I started, he came to my flat in London and we were testing underwater, it was obvious to mirror what the camera was doing with microphones. And then the idea was that, so we recorded in London some saxophone players, Seymour Wright and John Butcher. I think I've got here, there they are, in my flat. I record a lot in this room in my apartment in London.
You don't usually use super fancy, fully equipped music studios.
Yeah, I have a very flexible, portable setup so that
You mentioned that this is your recording studio.
Yeah, this is my recording studio. A lot of the time, this is called a sonosax. It's they designed it for, was kind of used for film sets, for capturing sound on film sets. It was, I became friends with the guy who designed it, and he was telling me he always went to Godard's house, and he went on they used it on the Kubrick set and stuff, and it's really, but for film sound, and then classical music, they've really got into it, some people, because it's very realistic sound. It captures what's there. It doesn't add character to it. It's which is what I tend to want to do. I mean, both these players are really unique in the way they play saxophone. John Butcher, looking into the camera there, he has a series called Resonant Spaces, where he plays in unique environments, like caves and stuff, and he uses the acoustics of different spaces, and then with the saxophone it's great because you can really sort of project into... So he came to mind for this project. We even looked into maybe recording in some of the caves in Pompeii, but in the end I basically recorded them here in London, and then I took the recording. I was testing it as well with that's my rice cooker with the microphones in.
That is my favorite picture.
Yeah, these are these posh bottles of water you can get in London that fits the microphone really well. But then I thought, we always thought it'd be nice to record, get the landscape of where he'd been shooting for 4 years. And we ended up, I went with his assistant to, you see this body of water is where, that's where he actually shot. And I was really excited about the sort of water running from the volcanoes over the sound. So it was really putting the sound where it should be.
Use the physicality of the space.
Yeah. All that. And this is me sitting recording. We had to record at 2 a.m.
Otherwise it's too loud?
Because Gianfranco was freaking out because it was tourist season. And then I said, we can just do it when everyone's asleep. And so we started at 2 a.m. and we found this place. We drove around and we found this place, this pier. See, there's the recorder over there. And it had this metal sort of stairway going into the water. And I put these geophones, they're like microphones. They're used for recording volcanic sounds. So I thought I have to test that. That sounded bad. So
Why did it sound bad?
it didn't. It just was weird, like putting the saxophones in the volcano, and then it just didn't sound good. It was like a really nice idea conceptually, but it sounded bad. So, and I do expect that sometimes to happen. Like this water stuff, I thought might not work, but we have to try it. And this was the microphone on that stairway. And then I put one in, where's the water one? Underwater. See this microphone here? That one went underwater. The one in the posh drinking water thing from London. We just went there and just listened with the speaker underwater with the saxophones, and then it was magical though. It really, really worked. I've got some music. I mean, I've got some of the music that I can play.
That would be brilliant.
You can like hear all of the wind, because the wind was sort of blowing against the metal stairway, and the music was coming out of the water, and then those microphones were recording the water moving to the music, and created this really nice sound. It's like the volcano's like breathing. It's really, if you see the film, it's quite related. But
It sounds so eerie in a really lovely way.
yeah, like the waves are making the rhythm, and it's really. Yeah.
Has anyone ever told you, well, you could do that with just some plugins instead of flying to Naples?
That's the thing. You actually can't, because. But I said if it doesn't work, we can just use my bath stuff or like some EQ or something. You know, there are ways of you can actually make it sound more underwater with plugins, like that just.
Hyperreal, basically.
Yeah, just. But that texture, that like rhythm of the waves, and it just the way the microphones were placed and stuff, it did create something unique and that is the ideal in a way, because he's made this film from scratch. Like these images didn't exist, and now they do. And so the aim with the sound is to sort of acknowledge that as well, make it a unique experience for someone watching that. But yeah, that was really. And then we mixed it. I did it. I went to the sound mix in Rome. These are the Italian people. Yeah.
The approach for the Brutalist was different, though. No putting your microphones into water, but or were there microphones in water?
No, yeah.
How was the process there?
The Brutalist, I started really from the beginning. As soon as Brady went on set to do pre-production to Budapest, I went and I didn't number these files, but I'll just have a look. This was my setup, and I had a little bedroom in his apartment and I was doing demos. Yeah. So he was in the room opposite, and I was there.
That was in Budapest.
Yeah, and then he would come and listen to the demos and after his recce's and stuff. And it was great. He wanted to shoot when we went through the script, he was like, I'd love to shoot that scene to music, and then like he would play music on set. And there were some that really needed that. Like there was a jazz scene. I should just show you actually, because
Yes.
so the first day on set was where they had to do the jazz scene. This is me showing Brady. I've just got this recorder and a microphone plugged in. I was just showing him that the room sounded good, because everyone in the film production said the room, but we couldn't record music on it because it sounded bad, but it was a really good sounding room.
Yeah.
But they got a piano that didn't have any guts. Like, it didn't have any, it was a film set piano. So my friends started texting all the musicians they knew in Budapest.
To bring a proper piano?
To find a piano, because this was the day before shooting. And they managed to find a piano in time, and it was amazing, because the jazz scene, you know, they recorded it live. And
you brought musicians too for the scene, right? You brought musicians from Berlin and all over the place to have real musicians and not only people pretending to make the scene real.
That's Joel Grip. He lives in Berlin, and he's played on double bass on Brutalist and Anne Lee, the one that's showing on Thursday. And then that's Pierre Borel, he flew in from Marseille. Saxophone player. So yeah, and then it was great because it was the first day of shooting, and Adrian and Isaac de Bunkele, he knows jazz. He was so excited when he heard the music, because it's, you know, proper music. It was so exciting.
And you actually experienced it, or that the actors actually experienced it instead of pretending to, I suppose, acting to.
Yeah, it was like a really good atmosphere in there, and we hid some extra microphones behind the piano and stuff. This was hidden behind the piano, and the guy showed me how to sync it with all the dialogue mics and everything. It was really great. I always have my little keyboard on set. This was like, if you can see Adrian's on the ship at the start of The Brutalist. This guy's some random makeup artist. But it really worked. I liked demoing it because I was constantly in that kind of world of The Brutalist. So it was really a good way, and getting feedback all the time from Brady. Mm-hmm. It also, you know, by the time it gave me a good sort of structure to completing like such a long bit of music, you know, to sort of start early. But this was a funny day where I brought my keyboard, not this one, I brought my keyboard to the set to sort of think about the scene. And when I got there, Brady was already pumping out the demo in the set, like really loud. I'll show you. I don't know why he wanted the demo for this, but...
The video is a little bit more, not that loud.
So I got I was so happy because I'd just done that demo the night before, and it felt really good, you know, so.
I can imagine. That's immediate feedback, basically.
Yeah, you just sort of saw it and how he was going to cut it. And
I mean, that's a very, very close way of collaborating. Not only being a hired gun, but actually collaborating.
Yeah, here's a stupid video. I wanted to cut me out, but he wanted me to play piano at the train station to get all the actors like excited, and There he is. And we're very, very happy. Because we found this piano on set, and he like texted me saying, "Oh, can you come and play? Because it sounds really right, sort of for the scene." Yeah.
Not properly tuned.
Yeah, that's untuned piano. This piano was really weird. I found this piano in Italy, and it's like a early automatic piano. Where you put in these weird. I mean, this is rotten, which made it sound even weirder. I was so excited. You see that, like, weird sound, and then I used it for this. Oh, wait. Yeah, see those?
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, that's that weird piano. Yeah. What else? Yeah, then when we did the score, we did a lot of stuff in Berlin, because Axel Dorner is the best trumpet player. He lives in Berlin. So I sort of built it around him, basically, because the sessions and stuff. And I used my friend's, most of it was in my friend's painting studio in, I can't remember where that one is, but this was an Airbnb, no, not Airbnb, actually. It was my friend's flat.
The sonosax again.
He was trying to make sounds like construction sounds with his tuba. And then where is that? Joel's painting studio. This is where we recorded a lot of the stuff.
Painting studios aren't usually known for having great sound.
Yeah, it sounded good. And also you just can put the microphones. I mean, one of the scenes with the heroine, it was like, you just have a microphone close to the one trumpet, a microphone close to another trumpet, close mic the double bass, and then had a mic right up to the strings, because I was sort of patting the strings of the piano. Like, and then I had a room mic, but then you just decide how much room you want to bring in. Close micing for music on films is sometimes really good, because it's obviously like really, you have to be careful with the space, because if you're watching a film and they're like in the woods, and then you've got like a Kreuzberg painting studio sound on top of that, it doesn't, you just got to be careful of putting rooms on top of rooms and stuff. So I do a lot of close miking. Yeah, this room was really good, where I recorded John Tilbury playing piano. This was just in his... I just did short videos so you didn't get bored, but... Yeah, that was amazing. He's one of my favorite artists, and sometimes we had an issue because his roof, like birds would walk on the top of his roof. And one day it was really raining. But that really added to the quality of it, actually, in the end. You know, Brady was really into that feeling.
Did you have the entire composition sketched out at these points?
Definitely. No, with John Tilbury, it was a lot of music, solo piano. And he's really, like, one of my favorite musicians, and I really wanted, he was the first sort of musical voice that I thought of when I read the script. And
why?
Just from seeing him over the years, like the quality of this sort of his touch. I don't know, I've seen him do prepared piano as well, so it felt like the range of it. I also just the idea of sitting down with him and sort of going through what I don't know. I don't know why, but I played Brady a lot of his music, and it's almost like wanting to bring as little as possible when we do those sessions, because bringing the theme is like really important, and sort of trying to explain like what we're trying to achieve in the right way that doesn't limit them, because otherwise you could just get a random classical player or someone that's going to read stuff. The idea was to do what's needed for the film, for the scene, but also to have his instinct and him as an artist himself playing. So
you let him just improvise?
Yeah, and then talked about it, and then it was I actually kind of had to move in. I moved into like a bread and breakfast next to his flat for because we were really late in keeping up with the post-production at that point, and it was just long, you know, for the intermission, 15 minutes of music. So yeah, we were spending all day, every day, just going through it, and it was trying to capture that improvised feeling, but also doing the heavy lifting that it needed to do with the narrative. But yeah, really trying to get that feeling of him sort of playing how he plays, but then also introducing the themes and yeah.
In your acceptance speech for the Academy Awards, you said something that really stuck with me. You talked about the radical, uncompromising musicians you work with. Did you have or do you feel like it's a hard time convincing, maybe not the directors you work with so closely, but production officers, etc., to take the risk, quote unquote, to work with radical, uncompromising musicians?
No, it's just I work with directors where I don't have to ask permission to do anything apart from it's the director and me decide what the music's going to be.
So you don't have to deal with office people?
No, definitely not. And also I can't bring these people, Steve Noble, this is him recording in his kitchen. I can't ask someone like that who has their own sort of creative life and has made decisions about what, like they put out their own records and stuff. I'm introducing them to a situation, and so it needs to be one of trust. So, the scary thing is like when they start making these crazy trailers, and you have to sort of be careful that they don't use these quite special musicians' work in ways that might make them feel uncomfortable. But people like Brady are really sensitive to that. Okay. And really appreciated that these people were coming on board to what's essentially his piece of work. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's talk about the movie, the film that some of us will potentially watch tomorrow, The Testament of Anne Lee. It is a musical, again, probably a very different process, a very different approach, but a musical about a religious community that did not use any instruments themselves.
Yeah, they have loads of hymns and songs and stuff, and
I read that there's 2 left. 2 shakers are left.
now there's 3 because someone else joined.
Oh,
Yeah, after seeing the film.
really?
No. It was during. You know what? They did all of the credits at the end of the film, and it said these are where the shakers are now, because the film's like 1780. I don't know. It's an in the olden days, and then they said that there's 2 in the credits. It says now there's 2 shakers left, but they had to change it because someone else joined.
That's beautiful.
It's amazing. Yeah, it was weird though, because yeah.
I assume they're not flying in for the red carpet tomorrow. But take us through the process for the musical, because again, that's sounded like it's a very different approach to the scoring again.
Yeah, this one I had to start. It was straight after the Brutalist, and I was really tired, but I had to start with Mona, and they're a couple, so
There was no way out.
yeah, I was literally in the middle of the bed, and then I had to roll over to the other side. It was really... So I went to New York, and I just locked myself in. They have a producer who's a really special guy called Andrew Morrison, and he has an office in New York that I used for writing. And I like to write on these sort of quite simple keyboards. So you just press like a button, and it's sort of, strings, or it's you get sort of quite quick sounds. It's quite basic sounding. And then if it feels good with these basic sounds, it's a good sign, because when you go and record it acoustically later, it's always going to be better. So, but this one I had to initially write songs for the dance rehearsals. So I was like going to demoing in the studio, sending them to Mona, and then going to the dance rehearsals. It's like... Yeah, it was really cool to make these tracks in the evening, and then suddenly people were
Immediately doing the practice.
you were responding to stuff, and yeah.
That doesn't sound like a composer who's sequestered in his super high-tech studio. That sounds very involved. How did it continue from this stage onwards? You ended up using instruments with this score.
Yeah, I mean, we did at this stage we were researching a lot about the shakers and sort of working out the approach, and started off with thinking of improvising singers that I love, like Phil Minton and Maggie Nichols. Phil's really amazing. I'll show you his. This is him recording later in my flat. He was improvising to the whole film.
Oh, so you watched the whole rough cut and improvised to it?
That was when the picture was locked. So he literally, in the sound mix, which we mixed the sound in Berlin, and it was with Steve Single, the sound mixer. He had everything, and then we had these sort of stems of improvising singers, and then we brought more and more stems because we wanted everything to be like really mixed, like the singing on set and the sounds of, Steve Single did crowd recordings, and then I was doing these sort of choirs. This is in my friend's gallery next door in London. We were doing these. Like these sessions. Yeah, I sort of wanted, the Shakers were not like professional singers, so I had a lot of, untrained voices and stuff in there. And then Amanda, the lead actress, she's got this very sort of pure, trained voice, and it's like sort of impressive, and it was nice because you sort of constantly, she seems really elevated in the whole thing, I think.
So you didn't tell her to sing as if she cannot sing?
She did some workshops with Shelley Hirsch, who's another improvising singer from New York. She really, like, throughout the process, really pushed the dynamics of her voice. So that was something we were really excited about. Like, every time we had sort of a sound, we'd try and, instead of bringing loads of sounds in, sort of use, push what those sounds were as far as possible. So the first sound that we thought with that was bells. These little handbells, because in the script there were sort of church bells in Manchester in the 18th century, and in the Shaker village in America they had bells. So I started with handbells, and then I ended up recording in the place where you rent percussion, because we went to have a look around. I went with Steve Noble, the percussionist, and we found all these crazy instruments like church bells, tuned church bells, and these big metal plates, which had this massive low end. And because I've got this recording set up where it's portable, we could just record there rather than like trying to work out a way to rent all these heavy instruments. I'll show you.
I was about to say, you have a video of the church bells
Yeah.
you played with.
This is in the, yeah. And then we had people like Billy's trying bowed bells here. It's my flat. That was in the string sessions, because I ended up doing a lot of, this is when I tried to ring all the bells at the same time.
I wanted to ask you something private.
Oh.
It's fine. Thank you.
Can it wait?
I wanted to ask you if you accept questions from the audience.
Oh, right.
In a bit.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Good.
That was, my friend was so tired because we were ringing all the bells, and there was like 50 of them. And
how did you ring them all at the same time?
We had two, one in each hand, so 4 at a time.
Okay.
And yeah, the idea was that it was like the peak of the film where the fire happens and everything, and it was such an extreme, I wanted something really extreme to happen. And sonically it's amazing because you've got all these notes that are like chromatically next to each other. If you play like a C and a C sharp, it sounds very dissonant. So it was like that times 25, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, you're not only a composer and a musician. I mentioned earlier that you also, and you talked about it, you also draw. How do all these disciplines intersect with each other and kind of play into creating something like this?
I've got actually, so this was when I moved to Budapest this was my studio in the Airbnb. All the actors really liked coming to record in the Airbnb rather than getting a studio. And it meant that they didn't schedule any of the singing in.
They just dropped in?
Huh?
They just dropped in?
Yeah, I was just texting the actors saying like, oh, I see you're not shooting. Or like, you finish at 8 p.m, can you come at 10 p.m? And because it was all done for a very small budget, and it was a short shoot for what it was. It was really amazing. They didn't have a film company involved until, it was distributed. So it was all sort of, the whole process felt very DIY in a sense, but I love having, you see these drawings behind, I love when I'm working on writing particularly, I love moving to a desk and doing some drawings, because it's like instead of sort of twiddling my thumbs and sort of overthinking the music stuff, I just do something else for a bit, and then through drawing a lot of the time I have it's like a refreshing of the mind in a way. But I feel this was I just kept doing more and putting more and more on the walls. This is sort of what I do when I live in a space.
Are the drawings then related to whatever you're working on at the moment?
I don't know, sometimes you'll see like a little shaker in them, but I try not to sort of overthink. I'm having an exhibition in March in Paris, and I said to them, I don't want to have a title or pretend it's about something. It's just the drawings. I love the drawings because I just do them, and it's very different scale to the music work, and you can do a drawing in like 20 seconds and it can be finished, whereas a film can take a year and a half. And I love that about it, and I think it's important. It is important to me to have that as well. Yeah.
Does it help to cope with what I assume would be the overwhelm or the overwhelming nature of a big project that you're kind of starting to tackle somehow at 10 different ends at the same time?
Yeah, it definitely helps me. It's very grounding, drawing. Like, you don't need to... That's why I like drawing as well rather than painting. It's just completely... For me, it's like the most direct way of making something. Just literally put your pencil on and then it's... Yeah.
I mean, coming from a DIY, underground, experimental, broke but brilliant taste kind of world, you're now, as we talked about earlier, thrust into this film world. Can you give any advice to other musicians who would also like to get into scoring or are thinking about it, how to pick projects? You mentioned earlier that after the Oscars you were offered quite a few projects that you didn't want to do. In our conversations before this, you said you felt confused after the Oscars. How to stay radical while still dipping into this world?
It's not really about, I don't know, it's just about choosing people to work with that you have you have an affinity with, or, yeah. I think with Brady, I really connected to him as soon as I met him. We were talking about films we like and music we like, books we like. And so I like spending time, with Mona as well. Spending time with her, having a coffee, because you're working with them for a long time. So, well, I tend to. So I think for me, it's important that the process is engaging as well. But yeah, I think it's important to work with people that feel right, but I don't know.
People you like?
Yeah, hopefully.
So what's coming next now?
Working on the drawing exhibition in March, and then some of my own music, and slightly getting into Brady's next film as well, which has come together much quicker than his other ones, because the Brutalist went well, everyone's reading his script and stuff, which didn't happen before. Well, it took longer, you know.
Well, I'm excited to hear your next score. I'm excited to see The Testament of Anne Lee tomorrow. And since we have established that you're going to take questions from the audience, we have half an hour for questions for the audience. And there is already the first ones in the first row.
Oh my gosh. Hello, Daniel. It's nice to meet you from 20 feet away. I'm Caroline. I'm a film composer. I only mention that because my question's really specific.
Great.
I noticed that you're not very precious or picky about where you record. You know, in all three, you were like, oh, this was in the Airbnb, this was at my flat, this was at Brady's flat. And I was wondering if, you know, you have this like, because some composers are like, no, we have to do it in a studio, no room noise. Maybe you have an affinity for it because you were like a live musician. That's just my guess, but what about it do you like? Do you ever cut, you know, any of it out, or do you just kind of keep it as is? Thank you.
Yeah, why do I like these spaces that aren't studios? I mean, one started out of necessity because I have this flat in London, and you know, with my flat, it sounds fine. I mean, it's actually got quite a nice sound to it, the living room. And if you put microphones facing the inside, you know, I use an ORTF, which is like a stereo setup that doesn't pick up stuff from the back. So it limits like the motorcycle noise, like motorcycles going past and stuff. So it's choosing like you know, that's a better room stereo setup than like an spaced Omni where you're capturing everything around, yeah. So it's using microphone choices like that. And then it's really practical. I mean, obviously studios can be great, and if there's loads of people, sometimes that's a good idea. But when I like the intimacy. I work closely with musicians, and I sort of try not to tell everyone, you need to do this and you need to do that. It's just the way that I work. Like, I don't read and write music, and it's a lot of exploring stuff with the musicians. You know, I don't know that you saw the tuba player trying to make construction sounds. I don't know how people can make construction sounds with the tuba, because I don't play the tuba. And it's also nice to do that in a sort of relaxed environment, because in the studio you're sort of looking at how much time you have, and yeah, I don't know, I've always felt it's sort of more freeing and intimate, and the results, yeah, it's ideal if you can get around obviously the sound issues. But studios can have sound problems as well, like yeah. And I love the consistency of using my microphones and this recorder, the Sonosax, because I know sort of what that sounds like, so I can really hear the different spaces or the instruments, because I'm using all the same microphones and stuff. I really try and stick to the same microphones and preamps as well. It's useful. I don't know if that answers some of it. Okay.
You're a real ambassador for the Sonosax. There's another question here in the front.
Yeah, I am actually, because honestly, it's like you collaborating with. Obviously, it's a piece of equipment, but it really allows me to do stuff creatively. So I'm like I'm quite sort of enthusiastic about it. It's like
Hi. My name is Eva. I'm also a composer for short films as well. My question would be, since we've now seen like you have many different approaches to how you work with directors and how you work with coming up with a concept for a film, I was wondering, do you have a preferred way of working? Like, do you want to work before the picture lock is ready, or do you want to prefer to work after everything is done? Do you have a preferred way of doing that?
I like the idea of, I like working from the script before they've started with images. For me, it's sort of, as soon as they have images, it's sort of like the ceiling comes down a bit. And you're sort of, it's nice when you have images and stuff gets more specific, but I like that, just sort of the dreaming part of it, where you're just sort of thinking about sound. And what's nice with Mona or Brady, if I send them a little demo or like a recording, they kind of know what they want. So, Brady will just say, yeah, that's great for the opening, and then that's it, really. I think directors are different though, but with those two, it's really, it feels really good to work as early as possible, and stuff doesn't change that much. And then, yeah, obviously when they've locked, I love helping with the edit as well. I sort of ban temp music from the whole process. It makes it difficult because they want to edit to music, and sometimes you sort of sometimes it's helpful at that point to have like some cuts to help out. So it's this weird sort of, you're sort of chasing them, they're chasing you, but I think I like that difficult process. I think it's really productive. And the idea is, with temp music, it can just confuse, people get used to stuff, and then they want you to copy something, I don't know. I haven't been in that situation, but I know it from demos. When you make, I used to hate making demos when I was writing music for records and stuff, because sometimes if something doesn't work, you're like always going back to the demo. They call it demoitis. But yeah, so the temp thing, that's my favorite way to work, is from the script. And then it's quite impractical in a way, because it just means you're doing it for like a year and a half or something, but yeah.
Doesn't sound like you're too keen on efficiency.
Oh yeah, well, if we're doing it, then we may as well do it as best as we can, I think.
Fully agree. There was a question in the back over there.
Hi, Daniel. My name is Jacqueline. I'm a music producer. First of all, thank you very much for this amazing desktop presentation. Very inspiring. My question is, I'm just curious on your thoughts about AI. I'm very new to the film composition world, so I'm just wondering whether this is a blessing or a curse at the moment. Is it going to replace basically film composers or not? And just your thoughts on this.
Thank you, because I skipped over my AI question.
Oh, you skipped the...
I skipped my AI question, so thank you for asking that.
Yeah, sometimes you hear music that's sounds quite boring, and maybe it will be better at doing some...
Oh, this way around.
I don't know.
AI music is also boring because it's also just, something that is made off of everyone's creativity and then just mid.
Yeah, it freaks me out a bit. I've been sort of ignoring it, like in terms of really having like a big idea about what I feel about it, because it sort of freaks me out, the whole thing. So I've just been getting on with stuff, but yeah. The process is like the way Gianfranco makes films. He sits with like these people for days, and he's capturing someone, and it's really related to, humanity and just his process. So, it's quite far away from how, like, you imagine like AI stuff is, but.
And so to the question, do you think it will replace people like you? I have a theory, but...
I don't know.
Do you want to hear my theory?
Yeah, definitely.
You're very polite. I think it will just become more boutique. Someone like you would be considered a boutique service, making a soundtrack that's unique for a project that's very artistic. But I fear that a lot of music producers will be forced to use AI for just maybe projects that don't attempt to create something unique. But that's just my theory. Gebrauchsmusik, we would say as Germans.
Oh, one thing that it makes me think, though, is, it definitely reminds me how special live music is.
Oh, yeah.
And that's sort of really primitive. Like, people always are wanting to watch people perform, since... That's why, like, drawing's very primitive. Everyone's always wanted to make marks along the sand and stuff. So, yeah, I'm sure you're right.
We have a few more questions and a few more minutes.
Merci, Elaine. Hi, my name is Felice Hermann de Miranda. I'm a director and DOP. I don't have a question. I want to say something about AI. It is, so people like him or people like a lot of the people sitting here, we create art. Like, art is something inherently human, and it is part of us since, we painted caves, as Chloe Zhao said it before, and we pretend like it's not, as if it's not in our hands, but where there is low demand, there's also a lesser probability of a product being sold. And I think it is in our hands, actually, that we do not let ourselves be frightened and get influenced by some technocrats who want to sell their products and who want to actually monopolize on the art itself. Because it's really important that the art is created in a non-efficient way, because human life is not about efficiency. It's about our expression. It's something really basic, and that's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. There were some questions over here as well. Are they questions or comments? Good.
Hi, my name is Christian. I'm also a film composer and musician. I have specific questions to the Brutalist, to the intermission. I didn't leave the room because I loved the atmosphere in between the two parts. And my question is, is this the first music specially composed for an intermission for film? I don't know. The second question would be, was it your idea or the director's idea to have this music composed? It seemed very fragile. Like, sometimes I heard one of the themes and it started stopping and it started again. It was really wonderful, so I really loved it. And so my question, was it your idea or the director's to compose that music?
The script, thanks for staying in the intermission. It's my favorite piece of music in the whole thing. And in the script it said intermission with music, solo piano in the script, so yeah. But that was really special because it was, when I was working, actually staying with Brady in pre-production with that keyboard setup, he heard me through the door, like messing around with the theme on the piano. And he sort of came in and was like, that sounds really good, whatever you're doing. And I was like, I was just trying to work out, because I have to play, because I don't understand chords and, music theory. So a lot of the way that I write is like trying stuff out over and over again. And he loved that quality of like stopping, starting. And I was recording it on my dictaphone at the time. So in the first editing, he used that dictaphone recording a lot throughout the film, and it's like got me dropping my vape, and but that was great because he loved this sort of dropping the vape and moving my chair and stuff. And when I recorded John Tilbury, I put a microphone on him, you know, so you could hear his breathing, his chair, his hands on the piano, because Brady liked that quality of the presence of the artist. And then also, there was this idea that on the second half of the film, the opening sequence to the second half, you see his wife, Ezrabet, and his theme, Laszlo's theme, develops into Ezrabet's theme. You know, literally it sort of like grows into that. And I recorded, with this I can record, it's battery operated, but you can record for hours. So I literally pressed record when we were working out stuff, and that was like literally a 20-minute recording of John working on those themes, like trying to work out some things. And that sort of trying to work out was a big part of that's what we wanted from the music. Yeah, for that character and stuff. But yeah, it was really connected to Brady. Brady is great at like being like, that's what I love. And yeah.
Another question maybe from that side of the room? We're coming back to you as well.
Hello. Wonderful talk. Thank you for that. My question is regarding, I guess, your affinity for experimental music. As someone into experimental music and improvised music, it's a wonderful thing to hear that there's a place for that. Not only that there's a place that it's celebrated, you know, in terms of the film world. I'm essentially wondering, is there an element of self-censorship, not even in a negative way, when trying to fit your score into someone else's vision? In the same way that a musician in an improvised piece might have to, you know, find their space and create space for others. Are there times where you felt you could experiment more and open yourself up more, and at times where you had to be more kind of conservative in your experimentation with, I don't know, textures or different motifs or, you know, anything like that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one of the things that I realized was helpful early on was to really remember that when you're working on the film, you're not making the OST, like the vinyl, or is that the soundtrack album? Mm-hmm. So you really just focusing on that experience of like watching the film it's different to an album because it's moving on. So as soon as a sound comes in, it's gone. And no one sort of stops it and plays it again in the cinema, because that would be unpractical. But like with the record, I can do whatever I want. So I like to think about, I can, you know, remove tracks if I think they're... But yeah, I haven't been in a situation where I feel sort of compromised for the wrong reason. It's normally, if one of the directors thinks something's could be better or something's not working, I respect them to make it better. Like, you know, you're subscribing to this collaboration when you start the project. And I think, I can imagine it can, you know, go in a bad direction if you choose the wrong person to collaborate with. But yeah, I'm not really trying to like enforce my music into the, project. Like, it is literally, that's what I was sort of saying as well before about like preferring films, is that's kind of genuinely what I think is the most important thing. A lot of people say the dialogue's really important as well. That's tricky. That's tricky to like, when you think something's great with the music and then the dialogue is in the same frequency as the clarinet or something, and then you have to work out how to make space for the dialogue, and it sometimes messes up. Like the Brutalist, at the start, it's all building, building, and building, and then someone says something in Hungarian, and they like dip the music, and I was saying, what, you have to keep going, like, you know, there's subtitles on the screen already, and we had this big debate, and now I write for those problems. You know, I'll be like, oh, I should use tubas rather than trumpets at that point, or some stuff like that. Yeah. Is that?
There's questions in the back of the room.
Hi Daniel, I'm David, composer myself. Thank you so much for your talk and sharing all these insights. I was wondering, I find myself extremely influenced by the spaces where I compose music. I see that you have been traveling to several destinations. How much are you affected by the environment? Besides going to some spaces to record the sounds of the environment, but how much is actually the space affecting your creativity? And do you think that the same music could have been created in your studio or like home studio in London? Like, how much is this influencing your process, like to absorb these different environments and places, I guess? So.
Yeah, I think the space, it depends really, because if you're sort of close miking a double bass, or like a violin, I could probably do it in my apartment, probably do it in a similar way to my apartment in London, or you know, in my friend's place in Marseille or something. But then, yeah, it always influences when it has like new acoustic properties and stuff. You tend to be influenced by the surroundings. But yeah, practically, sonically, I don't think, yeah, it depends what the space is, and yeah.
And another one from the back, maybe?
Thanks for your talk, sharing your process. You mentioned how you perhaps don't really understand chords and maybe music theory more broadly. I'm curious how that's evolved. Have you always sort of been feeling confident and sort of thinking, oh, I don't need a theory, or has this confidence developed as you've done more and more projects and felt confident in the lack of or limited music theory knowledge?
It's a bit of a mixture, because when I was learning music, you know, I learned piano and clarinet when I was little, and when I think about those times, it gives me sort of, it makes me feel weird, because I was always struggling to read the music. I didn't get good grades, like I didn't get like grade 6 or whatever. And it can make you feel horrible being in like those situations. Well, it did for me. And then I sort of came to music in making songs and like bands and stuff where you don't really have to know anything. And there's a lot more of a history of not knowing, like reading music in rock bands and stuff. Then doing the score with Mona's film, The World to Come, her first film, I was writing on the clarinet, and when I was writing down the notes, I'd write like A, B, you know, all the letters basically. And I actually realized it was quicker to write on this sort of stave, to read it while you're playing clarinet. I mean, it's an obvious thing for most people, but for me, I just sort of, and then I thought, oh, I wish I sort of knew a bit more about this. But in the Brutalist, my friend, Tom, who was playing double bass, who plays double bass a lot, he played viol in the Testament of Anne Lee. He actually wrote out the chords for the brass. I had a trio, and they wanted to read the notes. It's really basic stuff, and Tom wrote it out. And I've worked with him for years, so he knows the theory and stuff, so it was nice for him to communicate that. Loads of people are like, you don't need that. But it's the same with drawing as well. I went and studied really classical drawing techniques when I was like 25, and it just felt like a really good time to learn about life drawing and because I was self-taught. So yeah, it's a bit of both really. I think it'd be useful to know a bit more actually. But yeah, then loads of people who know that stuff find it say to me like, oh, it's good that you don't know it. So, I don't know.
Maybe one from the front over here. Sorry for making you run around.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your process with us. I'm Mina, one of the composers with the Talents program. And my question is regarding your process, because a really big part of it depends on experimentation and trying things with musicians and not really knowing how things are gonna turn up. So how does this sit with your process and maybe things like producers and deadlines and not really knowing what's gonna happen? Because in a way you're signing a deal with the unknown. You're not sure whether you're gonna be done in 4 months, 6 months, 1 year. How does that work with you and the production and everything?
It's something I like about the process with films is that the deadlines are so serious. You know, if you hand in something late, it can have massive repercussions on the production. They can have like financial repercussions because their sort of timings are tied with loans and all this stuff. So and I really like that because with song records, the label are like, we have a deadline in May, and you just know it's bullshit. Like there's no deadline. No, I mean with my music, maybe a pop star, it makes a big difference if you're trying to like get into the charts. But I'm definitely not going to get in the charts. So, and then I'm like, oh yeah, I've been just writing and dreaming, and I'm going to just actually do it in September instead. And they're like, oh yeah, cool, do whatever you want. And then a year later, you know, you put it out and but no, I like that. It's like I was saying with the drawings is like, if I want to, I can do all of this sort of, whatever I want, you know, with my records or with the way that I work with my own stuff. With the film, it's really nice to be like, I don't want to let this director down, and it gives a really nice structure. And you have to trust that you're going to make good decisions, you know, and then you're going to make something else afterwards. And it's about, like he was asking about, does the space influence your work? And I probably didn't give a good answer, but all these things influence the work, like time constraints, like where you have to work, who you're working with, all of these ingredients make the music what it is. And I think you just have to embrace that. Well, I like to embrace that. Those are the sort of conditions that you're making it in. Not, could it be better if I spend 6 years on it or something? It's like, no, the only way to do it is in 2 months. So what you do is going to be what it is and what it was, you know. Makes it a certain way, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much. As a last question, I have a request. You have a video clip on your computer from the scoring of The Brutalist that is my favorite because it kind of encapsulates the obsessive nature in a good way of your work. It's shooting a gun in Carrara, the quarry there, and why you did that. Are you open to showing it and quickly explaining what you did there?
Yeah, so Brady, in The Brutalist, Brady shot in Carrara, which is where they mine the marble. And when he went, when I started seeing the images of the quarry that he shot in, it just looked like it would have a really interesting sound. You know, the reflections and everything sounded like it would be quite unique. So the saxophone for that scene we'd already been thinking about Evan Parker playing, who's really specific, like he makes really specific sound with his soprano, and yeah, ideally we would have I would have gone with Evan to that quarry and recorded there, but that was impossible. So it's quite relatively common thing to do is you can capture the impulse response of a space. So you basically, in this case, we used a gun, and you shoot into the space. You record the gunshot, and then also the sort of the reverb, so the sound bouncing back of the shot, and then you put it into the computer, and it basically takes the gunshot out of the recording. So you're left with just this sort of empty space, the echo. And then we put the saxophone into that reverb, so it was like you can put anything into it, but in this case, the saxophone was literally in that space, if that makes sense. I'll show you the video. But yeah, that was another thing, it worked. It sounded really nice, so we used it. Where is it? This was the...
Thank you so much. A great way to end this talk. I think the main takeaway is work with people you meet at noise shows and you get along with. And thank you so much, Daniel Blumberg. Thank you, dear audience. Thank you, Berlinale Talents and Radialsystem. Thank you.
Thank you.